Welcome back to Switched to Linux. Well, it's been about a year or so since we've done our last video on Tails, and it is time for a refresher course. There are a few differences here and there, a few things I want to check on if I remember, and one of them I have just recently discovered, this is take 2 of this video by the way, is that at present the Tails installer does not appear to be finding secondary USB drives. Not exactly sure why that is, but we're going to go ahead and choose a different means of installing than what I have done in the past, where you can boot any Tails, run the Tails installer, and clone your current version of Tails into the USB drive. Unfortunately, it's not finding USB drives at the time I'm recording this video in that Tails installer. So we'll do a workaround to that, which, granted, that may not be. That was actually the old way to install Tails officially. I think they have changed it in recent years anyway, so let's go back. First, if you're unaware of Tails, this is an acronym. It is the Live Amnetic Incognito Live System. I think I put 2 lives in there. It's live, I guess. I don't know. It is Tails, the Amnetic Incognito Live System, which means that it doesn't remember anything every time you boot it up. It is a live key. It is explicitly designed to not remember anything, with the sole exception of the just the basic persistent stuff. If you happen to do anything under persistence, you can do that. So who is Tails for? You can avoid surveillance, censorship, advertising, viruses, and crazy X's. Those are all people that might want to consider using Tails. If you are in an abusive relationship and you are trying to get out of it and making your plans, please keep a copy of Tails on hand so you can do encrypted communication with people who are going to help you in your escape plan, for sure. Anytime you want to, like you is down there right now, right? I mean, if you want to look up that weird rash on your foot and you don't want to be sold foot cream for the next eternity, looking up that weird foot rash on Tails is a great way to not get tracked. Obviously, journalists and activists have good means to not want to be tracked either. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to walk through how to install Tails, and like I said, a couple things are slightly different from previous versions. If you have Windows, Mac, Linux, no matter what, you can download it. So using these links here, you're going to download it, verify it through your browser, and then automatically install it to your system. You also have the option to download a version for a USB stick. This is a .img file to prevent maximum tampering. Maximum tampering resistance, we should say. You can do a virtual machine. It's going to give you an ISO, and then there is a version for if you want to burn it to a DVD. Best way to make sure no changes are ever done to your system. So what we're going to do here is I do things slightly different usually, but we'll go ahead and walk through our instructions. First, if you have Windows, you're going to need a USB stick, Windows 7 or later, 2 gigs of RAM, a smartphone or printer. This is nothing. It's not verifying anything on a smartphone, which would be horribly dangerous. That's just so you can follow along with the instructions during parts you have to turn off your computer. It basically assumes you have one computer. I will note that as you're doing the installation, they are not doing any weird, crazy tracking. Here's Privacy Badger. There is no tracking being done. Here is uBlock Origin. No tracking being done. No Google Analytics, no Facebook, no TikTok, tracking pixels, no advertising stuff. These guys are legit. Okay, they're not trying to track anything that you are doing. The idea here is you're going to grab Tails, you're going to verify it, you're going to download their Etcher application that they are providing. This is important because remember those malvertising campaigns we've been talking about on the news lately, where people are getting domains similar to the real application, ranking them high on SEO ranks, and then taking out Google ads in order to be really high on the listing. And then you search for something like Etcher, click the button, and you might very well be installing a malicious version. Wendell at Level 1 Tech recently said that as he was looking at he was either doing Etcher or Rufus. I think he might have said Rufus, both under the same idea. He said the entire first page was all malicious. Everything you would download, the first page of the internet search result was all malicious, all of it. So they are actually providing you the download. So here is, and if you look at it, this is not linking to an external site. This is linking to their verified version of the application. So if you are using Windows, they're going to give you the options, and then here's a QR code. Or if you want to print the paper instructions, you can do that. Basically, it's just once you get the system installed here, now you have to reboot your computer. And when you do, you have to reboot the computer with the USB drive instead of the main operating system. And they walk you through how to do that and then the first couple steps there. If you are using a Mac instead, make sure that you have to have a Mac with an M1 processor. The M2 processors are not going to work for you. Again, the smartphone is only there if you need to have an extra device to follow along on the instructions. And then you're going to need about an hour-ish of time, which the time it takes to download 1.3 gigabytes and a little bit of time to install it. Now on Linux, what they're doing is they're assuming you either have or can get the GNOME disk utility. So that's what you're using on Linux to install it. You can, of course, use the dd command. What I generally do is, since I'm over here on Linux Mint, is I just use the USB image writer is what I use because Linux Mint is awesome like that. And it all works the same way. You do need to make sure that whatever is going on that disk is going to be completely destroyed. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to walk through the installation. So I've actually already downloaded and verified my drive. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take, this is my current Tails build, which is a little bit of out of date. Actually, I wiped it out to nothing because I thought that might be why it was having issues with detecting the USB drive on the Tails installer. Newsflash, wasn't the case. All right, that's exciting. So what we're going to do here is let's go ahead. You know what? Let me just show you both ways. If you're using something like Linux Mint, MX Linux, anything that has a USB image writer, just go ahead and start with, not documents, under downloads. And here's your Tails image. And then you're going to drop it onto your USB drive, hit write, you're done. All right, let me walk through, though, how they're going to have you do it as well, because this also has disks. And with disks, we're going to select the drive we want, all right? And then click on your three icons up here and hit Restore Disk Image. We're going to search for the disk image, select this guy here, and push your Start Restoring. This is going to take a few minutes. So once I hit the Start Restoring, we need to go ahead and hit the Restore button. And then that's going to begin your process. So we'll come back here when that is done. All right, so our disk is done. And now what we're going to need to do is pop this guy out, and then we're going to put it into our test computer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you on the computer here. On the Linux page down in the very bottom, they have all of the different buttons you would hit depending on your particular computer, how you get to the custom boot menu keys. So I'm using a Dell here, so this is F12. My main streaming computer, the one we're recording this on, is F11, as that is an MSI board that we have. So look at your device manufacturer and click the appropriate button. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to boot my system up, and then my capture card will not kick in until after we get into the device. So just to kind of tell you, I'm hitting powering on, hitting the F12 key, and then selecting USB storage from the boot device list. And then once we get into there, we have a screen that's telling us to use Tails or Tails troubleshooting mode. And then once we get on into Tails, then we're going to have the option of seeing the various setups that we have here. All right, so when we first get booted up here, there is a Tails screen here, and these will choose the various options. We can start with the basics, our language, keyboard, formats. And then do we want to create persistent storage? So if you hit the create persistent storage, then we are going to configure the persistent storage, or if persistent storage is already detected, it's going to give you the option here to open persistent storage. So we're going to go ahead and create persistent storage, and then we have extra options here. So we have administrative password. So if I wanted to enter an administrative password here, I can go ahead and do this. Now, the administrative password is a one-time thing. Every single time that you boot the system, you're going to have to choose whether you want a password and what the password is. I'm going to use my not super secret password that's definitely not 123. We're going to do that. Now, this could compromise security on this instance, but it's not going to compromise security forever, just as long as we have the system open. The other options that we have here, we have MAC address anonymizer, which is always on by default. You turn that off only if you're connecting to a local network and you have some MAC filtering. Otherwise, the device, whatever network you're connecting to, has no idea what your actual MAC address is because it's always scrambled by default. Offline mode is going to disable all networking. If your only intention of booting this system up is to be completely offline, then this is going to prevent any networking capabilities from happening on the system at all. Unsafe browser, you're going to use this if you need to sign into a captive portal. So if I'm going to McDonald's and I want to borrow their Wi-Fi, you're going to possibly need to get onto the ClearNet first and click an accept button before it turns on internet. You're going to use the unsafe browser for this. So turn that on only in the case that you actually need that. All right, and then the other option you have, there's a network connection. This is obsolete. You used to be able to select how you're connecting to Tor here, but that's something that you do on the main system now. So we're going to go ahead and hit our Start Tails button. Once we get started, the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a screen. I'm going to mirror my screens just because I'm using a capture card so that everybody can see what I'm seeing easily without having multiple screens. All right, so we're going to go, I'm going to right click onto display settings, and then this is going to bring up our screen. I'm going to hit mirror, and then we're going to pick the resolution we want. Say yes, and keep the changes. There we are. Now everybody can see everything at the same instance. All right, so the first thing, let's ignore the Tor connection for now. First thing, we're going to set up our persistent storage. So as you can see here, persistent storage is telling us everything you do appears automatically when you, everything you do disappears automatically when you shut down, but you can save files and configurations in encrypted persistent storage. So this uses LUKS encryption on your device. You can store documents, Wi-Fi passwords, browser bookmarks, and so on. So we'll go ahead and hit continue. This is the part you want to be secure. So this is something you want to have a really, really good password. All right, so I'm not going to show the passphrase because this is a production system here. You can see it is a very complicated password. It has a wide variety of capitals, lower cases, and other weird configurations, and it's certainly long. So we're going to go ahead and create the persistent storage. So that is creating the storage. While that's doing its thing, let's go ahead and have a look at the other button. This one will automatically show up if we have a network connection. So right now I plugged an Ethernet cable into here. We could also just come on down and connect to Wi-Fi. So if I were to select my network here, it looks like there's somebody has a network here. I don't know if that's a fellow van dweller or some store nearby. That FBI surveillance van, he's kind of creepy. He'd be wondering what I'd be doing over here on the internet if I try to log into that. Now over here we can connect automatically, which is usually the best way to go. And you can do a Tor bridge if you have a problem connecting. And then you can hide to your local network you're connecting via Tor. So this is going to use some bridges or things like that. So if you do not want your whatever organization you're using to know what you're going through, you can go ahead and do that. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit connect to Tor. Well, that's connecting itself to Tor. We'll go back over to our persistent storage, which is done. So now you can always delete your persistent storage if you want to. You can change your passphrase if you want to. So what you have here, you have a persistent folder. So you can turn this on or turn this off. This is going to appear in your places under persistent down here. All right. And then you also have a welcome screen. You can save printers. You can save network connections. You can save Tor bridges. And then Tor browser bookmarks, There's Electrum Bitcoin wallet, Thunderbird email client settings. We have GNU PG. So if you want to do keys outside of Thunderbird, instant messaging, SSH client, and then you can install configured extra software, and then dot files, so system link dot files into the home folder. So let's have a look at the additional software here. So you can install additional software automatically from persistent storage when using it. To install some software using Synaptic Package Manager or apt on the command line. So let's go ahead and open that up. Now, if you want to be able to install software, you have to have configured an administrative password. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Oh, look at that. There's already an upgrade to Tails. Sure, let's go ahead and upgrade Tails now because I didn't even realize there was another upgrade. I downloaded this, only about a week or so ago. So, okay, we'll go ahead and get that fixed. All right. So it's downloading package information, says 17 minutes. Okay. Oh, really? That 38 minutes? Oh, that's just for package information. Okay, that's Synaptic. We're not going to do that. We're not going to add extra software right this second. We're going to let this do its thing first. See what we have. That's 1 hour. So it is actually running fairly slow. Now, Tor is not always extraordinarily slow. It really depends on your circuits. So we have our onion up at the top. Hit open onion circuits, and this will tell you a little bit about where your network's coming from. So this one here, this network here is giving us 77 Mbps. This one here is 88. This one here is 23. This is probably the one that's slowing us all down. Because what's going to happen is Tor works by routing you and bouncing you across all these different network connections. Oh, this guy's the slow one. So whatever you find that's super slow is actually going to be the thing that slows you down the most. Obviously, your data can only move as fast as the fastest node going through. And so that really is what is going on and why things are a little bit slow. Tor is not always slow. It really does depend on the particular networks that you have. Let's go ahead and start the Tor browser. Now, the one thing some people are tend to like to do is they might tend to like to maximize your browser window. You don't want to do that. You could adjust the size a little bit, but you don't want to maximize it because maximizing your browser makes you susceptible to fingerprinting. And if you maximize the browser, anybody who is running fingerprint analysis on your browser can see your screen resolution if you're maximizing your browser. But if you use Tails as the defaults go, it's going to be very difficult to figure out who you are. All right, so right now it looks like we are routing through maybe Germany or something. So here is our IP address. Notice that JavaScript is enabled. We could go into About Config and disable JavaScript, but there are security levels. And if we go down to the safest security level, now there was actually a note that I saw that JavaScript may not have been disabled if you did that. However, I've never verified that, so I want to verify that. So right now it is telling us that JavaScript is disabled. So apparently that was a bug that was fixed. So if I want to disable JavaScript, the best thing to do is to go to just change your security level and use the safest security level. That disables JavaScript. Fonts and icons, symbols will be disabled. Audio and video, media are going to be disabled. This prevents anybody from attempting to do some IP things. If I remember correctly, I think it's Shift-Control-L will reboot your browser into a different exit node. So you'll notice that my IP address had changed. Again, that's Shift-Control-L. So if you want to change your IP address, you can do that. So if you're landing on a site or something kind of going a little goofy, you can go ahead and do that. And that's going to make sure that everything is there. All right, let's boot Synaptic back up. Let's see if I can actually get that thing updating faster than an hour, because I'd kind of like to attempt to install extra software. All right, well, that finishes doing its thing. We're going to walk through all the other software that is available by default. Now, while you can install extra software, it is risky to do so. Any software that you have, if it has any form of analytics or telemetry, that has a possibility of breaking out of the DNS, although it is rare because the system does do a pretty good job of preventing that from happening. So the software by default. We have a persistent storage. That's our application we have going on over here. We have documentation. If there's an error somewhere, we can go ahead and use Whisperback to report it. This is the Tails installer that I was actually having issues with, and that it was not able to detect any extra USB drive. This is the older way that you would install Tails officially, is you would create one flash drive, boot into that, and then use the Tails installer to clone it onto the other. And that's how you got your persistent abilities and things. I think they've resolved all that, and the Tails installer might be vestigial at this point in time. I tried everything I could, and I could not get a target USB stick appearing in that system. All right, we do have KeyPass XC. We have Cleopatra here. We have Thunderbird installed by default. So that's what we have. Here is your Cleopatra. So here's where all different key pairs are. All right, and then we have, under accessories, we have GTK hash. So if you want to check the hash of something, you can go ahead and do that. We have Vim, basic text editor. Our files, we have Inkscape, GIMP, we have Electrum Wallet, we have the Onion Share, which is a really good way that you can share documents anonymously. Good using for journalists sharing information. This is where you're going to find your unsafe browser should you happen to want to use the unsafe browser. And it's going to give you a warning if you try and use that. So it's going to tell us we're going to start it up, and then it should give us another warning. Apparently they removed that warning from the system. Okay. All right, here is our LibreOffice suite. So we have, it looks like we do not have the databasing options, but we have everything else there. Sound and video, we have Audacity, most likely a version of Audacity without the telemetry, or the telemetry has been stripped out. Remember that Audacity did end up getting some telemetry. All right, so telemetry did not start until version 3 of Audacity. So we're running 2.4, so that's still good. We have Presario, Sound Juicer, Sound Recorder, we have videos. As far as our system tools, we have, I think the additional software, that's the additional software will give us the list of everything that is installed once our Synaptic there is all set up and ready to go. And then let's see, there's additional stuff, persistence, and then our basic utilities. So that gives us what we have in the background. So now we'll go ahead and wait this extra 30 or so seconds for Synaptic to finish, and then we'll install one more piece of software just for testing purposes. All right, so here we have Synaptic Package Manager. Let's search for something. Pativi used to be pre-installed. It's no longer anymore, just a basic video application. So this is going to install a few different items on here. I'm just going to do a brief check on all these guys here. Seems fine. We'll go ahead and mark that for installation. Now, this is not going to install on the global system. What's going to happen is it's going to install it onto your persistent volume. So if you launch up your persistent volume, it's going to have access to these applications, but if you boot your system without persistent volume, then it is not going to do that. So we're going to go ahead and wait for this guy to finish, and then we will come back when it is done. All right, so once we get it downloaded here, so it says add Pativi to your additional software to install it automatically from your persistent storage when starting Tails. Do we want to install it only once or install it every time? We'll go ahead and pick every time just as a test case here. And then I'm trying to think of what other software package is super light that we might do. Let me look at Simple Screen Recorder. Let me see how, and I want to see what that looks like just installing it once. So let's go ahead and grab this, mark for installation, and apply, and apply. So then what we're going to do is I want to see if we install it just once versus if we install it every single time. We want to see how that is, because it looks as though some of the other functions of the persistent drive might have changed from the last time we've had a look at it. Of course, before you would have to activate the persistent drive only at boot up. I'm wondering if we can activate the persistent drive at any time because of seeing the extra persistent drive tools available to us. So that's makes me wonder what behavior that is going to have. So we're just going to go ahead and see what happens here. All right, so now we're going to hit only install once here. Okay, close that, close that. And so now we have additional software. We'll pull up our tools here. So we'll see that Pativi has been installed to the persistent storage, whereas our other application, the Simple Screen Recorder, has probably not been added. All right, so let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is I'm going to reboot the system here. So we're going to power off Tails, and then we're going to go ahead and restart it, and we're going to see. My guess is that Simple Screen Recorder will not be installed. Pativi will be installed as long as I activate persistent storage. But we're going to try not activating persistent storage on first boot. So let's see what we see. Okay, so now on our boot up, let's go ahead and just for the sake, we're going to go ahead and re-enter my super secret password here. And then here is our persistent storage, which we are not going to unlock this time. We're just going to go ahead and boot directly into it. I want to test, are we able to activate persistent storage after the operating system has been booted up? All right, so checking our applications. Once again, those two applications are not here. And I want to look at persistent storage now. So it says persistent storage is locked. To use it and unlock it. So you do have to use the persistent storage, unlocking it in the startup screen. So we're going to go ahead and restart Tails, and we're going to check one more thing. All right, so persistent storage is now unlocked. We're going to start Tails this time, and we're going to check the status of the applications. And now we check our applications, and it looks as though we do not have the application there. But let's go ahead and pull up our persistent storage tool. Here's additional software. So now it has been successfully installed is what it tells us. So now it appears in our list. So now we have the ability to view it. All right, so overall, it would appear that on our Tails build here, a lot of the changes, I think there's a lot more basic security updates, obviously. There's a few more changes to how we actually get onto the network and a few options there. We have a lot more cool options inside of the persistent storage. So hopefully they resolve the issue that some versions of Tails, you have to wipe out your persistent storage to upgrade to the next ones. So that can be a little bit problematic, but we'll see what happens with that. So there's our final wrap up of Tails. Hopefully this has been a very helpful and informative system so that you can figure out how to use this, how to gain that extra little bit of privacy so that, the big companies are not trying to sell you foot cream when you look up that weird rash. Again, if you're somebody with a domestic abuse survivor, if you don't already have help, this is a great tool that you can communicate anonymously. It's always good to have Tails in your back pocket so that you have that extra layer of privacy and protection for those cases that you definitely need that. With that, guys, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.